Back to the channel. Today we're going to unravel some incredibly complex events in Genoa. Rumors are circulating around the Newman family, but what's the truth? In this video, I'll summarize the plot points that will be revealed in the next episode. Stay tuned to see what happens. Welcome back to our channel, your premier destination for the most explosive updates and deep dives into the lives of Genoa City's most complex residents. Today is a beautiful day to explore the shadowy corners of loyalty, betrayal, and forbidden passion that keep us all captivated. Let us immediately unravel the latest shocking developments shaking the very foundation of our favorite family. The atmosphere in Genoa City has grown increasingly suffocating, thick with the kind of palpable tension that precedes a devastating storm. At the absolute epicenter of this impending catastrophe stands none other than Phyllis Summers, a woman whose entire existence seems perpetually drawn to the most dangerous and chaotic elements life has to offer. Phyllis has never been one to shy away from controversy, but her latest romantic entanglement threatens to cross a line from which there may be no return. She has willingly invited darkness into her life by engaging in a reckless, passionate romance with Matt Clark, a man whose sinister reputation and brutal history cast a long, terrifying shadow over everyone he touches. The sheer audacity of Phyllis making out with a known criminal in the highly public corridors of the Genoa City Athletic Club has sent shockwaves of disbelief and horror through the community, setting the stage for an explosive confrontation that could permanently shatter her already fragile world. To truly comprehend the gravity of Phyllis's current downward spiral, one must look back at the catastrophic wreckage she recently left in her wake. Her disastrous tenure at the helm of Newman Enterprises was nothing short of a spectacular failure, a misguided power grab that inflicted severe, lasting damage on the very people she claims to love most. Although she ultimately surrendered control and returned the company, the emotional scars she inflicted on her family remain raw and as a hollow consolation prize for her spectacular fall from grace, Victor Newman handed her the reins of Abbotts, a business venture meant to pacify her restless ambition. Yet, even with Abbotts under her command, Phyllis finds herself reigning over an empty kingdom. The corporate victory means absolutely nothing when weighed against the devastating personal losses she has endured. The most agonizing consequence of her ruthless corporate machinations has been the profound alienation of her children, Daniel and Summer. Their ongoing refusal to forgive her transgressions has left Phyllis marooned on an island of her own making, drowning in a sea of guilt, regret, and unbearable loneliness that she desperately seeks to escape. It is precisely this profound, suffocating isolation that has made Phyllis so incredibly vulnerable to the manipulative charms of a predator like Matt Clark. When a woman is starved for affection and completely ostracized by her own flesh and blood, the sudden attention of a dangerous man can feel intoxicatingly akin to salvation. Matt has expertly exploited the massive void left by Daniel and Summer's rejection, slithering into Phyllis's life with promises of acceptance and thrilling unpredictability. For Phyllis, the danger Matt represents is not a deterrent. Rather, it is a seductive drug that numbs the agonizing pain of her fractured family. She has convinced herself, against all logic and reason, that she is the only person who truly understands him, the only woman capable of seeing past the monster to the man beneath. This dangerous delusion has blinded her to the very real, lethal threat he poses, allowing her to dive headfirst into a toxic romance that provides a temporary, albeit highly destructive, escape from the crushing reality of her loneliness. Watching this horrifying spectacle unfold from the sidelines is Nick Newman, a man currently staggering under the immense emotional weight of his own family's profound tragedy. Nick is already fighting a desperate, heartbreaking battle to support his mother, Nikki, who is spiraling into a deep, suicidal depression following the devastating revelation that her blindness remains a terrifying reality. The absolute last thing Nick needs is the added stress of watching the mother of his child willingly walk into the arms of a sociopath. Yet, when Nick witnessed Phyllis passionately kissing Matt Clark, a blazing inferno of protective fury ignited within him. Nick knows intimately the depths of Matt's depravity. He knows that Matt is not capable of genuine love, only manipulation and destruction. The sheer thought of Matt embedding himself in Phyllis's life, and by extension, remaining a constant, lurking threat in Genoa City, fills Nick with a righteous anger that demands immediate, decisive action. He absolutely refuses to stand idly by and watch Phyllis orchestrate her own violent demise. However, Nick is a seasoned veteran of the chaotic wars that defined Phyllis Summers' life, and he knows all too well that a direct, aggressive confrontation will only backfire spectacularly. If Nick were to simply demand that Phyllis end her relationship with Matt, her legendary stubbornness would instantly kick in. She would view his interference as an unwarranted attack on her autonomy, digging her heels in deeper and clinging to Matt with even greater ferocity just to prove a point. Recognizing the futility of a frontal assault, Nick's strategic mind begins to formulate a far more cunning psychological approach. He meticulously analyzes Phyllis's vulnerabilities, searching for the one piece of leverage powerful enough to break the hypnotic spell Matt has cast over. The answer, though fraught with emotional landmines, is glaringly obvious. The only force in the universe stronger than Phyllis's self-destructive rebellion is her desperate, all-consuming love for her children. Nick realizes that to save Phyllis from the monster in her bed, he must weaponize the very family she so desperately yearns to reclaim. With this daring strategy in mind, Nick makes the difficult decision to reach out to Daniel Romolotti, plunging straight into the heart of the young man's lingering resentment. Daniel has been actively keeping his mother at a cold, unforgiving distance, still deeply wounded by the collateral damage she caused during her disastrous stint. When Nick presents the horrifying reality of Phyllis's new romance with Matt Clark, Daniel is initially torn by a violent storm of conflicting emotions. A part of him wants to wash his hands of her entirely, to let her suffer the inevitable consequences of her own reckless choices. Why should he continuously step into the line of fire to rescue a mother who consistently prioritizes chaos over her family's stability? Yet, beneath the thick armor of his anger, the fundamental, unbreakable bond of a son to his mother remains. Daniel cannot simply ignore the sheer brutality of Matt's. The horrifying realization that his mother is actively inviting a lethal predator into her life forces Daniel to reconsider his stance, pulling him reluctantly back into the exhausting, turbulent orbit of Phyllis Summers. Knowing that Daniel's involvement alone might not be enough to break Phyllis's resolve, Nick extends his desperate campaign across the globe, contacting Summer Newman in the picturesque city of Milan. Despite the vast geographical distance separating her from the dark, suffocating drama of Genoa City, Summer remains inextricably tethered to the emotional roller coaster. When Nick delivers the chilling news about Matt Clark, the lush, romantic backdrop of Milan instantly fades, replaced by a cold, paralyzing dread. Summer possesses a razor-sharp memory of Matt's extensive history of violence and manipulation. She knows that this is not merely another one of her mother's misguided romantic adventures. This is a literal matter of life and death. The physical miles between them offer absolutely no comfort as Summer visualizes the monster wrapping his... United by a shared, overwhelming terror, Summer and Daniel realize that their ongoing boycott of their mother must be temporarily suspended. They must join forces with Nick to neutralize the immediate existential threat that Matt Clark represents. Together, this unlikely alliance of Nick, Daniel, and Summer begins to construct the ultimate emotional ultimatum, a high-stakes psychological trap designed to force Phyllis into an impossible corner. They understand that Phyllis is currently operating under the delusion that she has nothing left to lose, which is precisely what makes her connection to Matt so dangerously uninhibited. To counter this, they must offer her the one prize she values above all earthly possessions, their unconditional forgiveness and the complete restoration of their fractured family dynamic. The proposed deal is as cruel as it is necessary. Daniel and Summer will offer to wipe the slate clean, to completely forgive the Newman Enterprises betrayal, and to welcome her back into their lives with open arms. However, this monumental offer of grace comes with one absolute non-negotiable condition. Phyllis must immediately, publicly, and permanently sever all ties with Matt Clark. It is a transactional approach to family healing, trading the promise of maternal redemption for the immediate eradication of a dangerous criminal from their collective lives. The sheer brilliance of this strategy lies in its ability to directly attack the root cause of Phyllis's current vulnerability. By offering her the profound love and acceptance she has been desperately craving, Nick and the children are effectively attempting to starve Matt Clark of the emotional oxygen he needs to maintain his hold over her. However, the plan is fraught with immense psychological peril. Presenting this ultimatum will force Phyllis to endure an agonizing internal war. She will be forced to look directly at the children she birthed, the children she alienated through her own blind ambition, and make a definitive choice between their salvation and her own dark desires. It is a ruthless manipulation of her maternal instincts, orchestrated by a man who once loved her and executed by the children who still do. The emotional weight of this impending confrontation is staggering, setting the stage for a heart-wrenching showdown that will strip away all of Phyllis's defenses and expose the raw, bleeding core of her deepest insecurities and desires. As the trap is meticulously set, the narrative dives deep into the deeply flawed, stubborn psychology of Phyllis herself. Despite the overwhelming evidence of Matt's monstrous nature, Phyllis clings desperately to the intoxicating narrative that she is the catalyst for his ultimate redemption. In her mind, Matt's dark past is merely a misunderstood prologue to the beautiful future they are building together. She finds a perverse comfort in his darkness, as it makes her own monumental mistakes feel less egregious by comparison. When faced with the impending ultimatum from Daniel and Summer, Phyllis's initial reaction will likely be one of intense, defensive outrage. She will feel deeply insulted that her children are attempting to blackmail her, viewing their conditional offer of love as a manipulative tactic rather than a desperate rescue. The thrill of the forbidden romance with Matt, coupled with her innate fiery rebellion against anyone trying to control her, creates a massive psychological roadblock. The horrifying possibility exists that she might actually look at the lifeline her children are throwing her and stubbornly refuse to grab it, choosing the exhilarating danger of the abyss over the safe, judgmental shores of her family. Complicating this delicate psychological operation is the wildly unpredictable and violently volatile nature of Matt Clark himself. Matt is not a passive participant in this unfolding drama. He is a cunning, observant predator who is highly protective of his new prize. Currently confined and monitored by Victor Newman's ankle tracker, Matt is already operating under a suffocating layer of paranoia and restriction. If he even catches a slight whiff of the conspiracy brewing between Nick, Daniel, and Summer, his reaction will be nothing short of explosive. Matt views Phyllis not just as a romantic conquest, but as a crucial pawn in his larger, sinister games within Genoa City. The realization that Nick Newman is actively plotting to strip him of his most valuable asset will undoubtedly ignite a terrifying wrath. Matt is a man who thrives on intimidation and control, and he will not hesitate to unleash his particular brand of psychological and physical torment upon anyone who dares to interfere with his twisted agenda, placing Daniel and Summer directly in the crosshairs of a known psychopath. The danger escalating around this intervention cannot be overstated. Nick is essentially using Daniel and Summer as emotional bait to lure a tiger out of its cage, a gamble that could result in catastrophic collateral damage. While Nick's primary objective is to save Phyllis, he is inadvertently dragging her children into a highly volatile, potentially deadly conflict. If Phyllis attempts to break things off with Matt to appease her children, how will Matt retaliate? Will he accept the rejection gracefully, or will his dark, obsessive tendencies manifest in a terrifying campaign of stalking and violence? The very real possibility that Matt could target Summer in Milan or Daniel in Genoa City adds a suffocating layer of suspense. The children are offering their love as a shield to protect their mother, but in doing so, they are painting massive targets on their own backs, risking their own safety to pull Phyllis back from the precipice of a disaster she willfully walked toward. As the inevitable confrontation looms closer, the atmosphere in Genoa City thickens with an unbearable, suffocating dread. The stage is perfectly set for a monumental clash of wills, pitting the enduring, desperate power of familial love against the intoxicating, destructive allure of forbidden passion. Nick Newman stands as the weary architect of this dangerous game, praying that his desperate gamble pays off before Matt Clark can inflict irreversible damage. Daniel and Summer brace themselves for the emotional toll of delivering an ultimatum that could either save their mother's life or sever their relationship with her for all eternity. Meanwhile, Phyllis remains blissfully ignorant of the massive forces aligning to dictate her future, lost in the dangerous thrill of a romance that threatens to consume her entirely. Every secret glance, every hushed conversation, and every desperate plea is building toward an explosive climax that will irrevocably alter the landscape of all their lives, leaving a trail of shattered hearts and broken promises in its devastating. The tension has finally reached an absolute breaking point, leaving the residents of Genoa City holding their collective breath as the ultimate hour of reckoning. When Daniel and Summer finally stand before their mother, presenting the agonizing choice between the unconditional love of her family and the dark, seductive embrace of Matt Clark, the entire world will seem to stop spinning. Will Phyllis summon the profound strength required to walk away from the intoxicating thrill of her dangerous romance and finally begin the grueling work of repairing her shattered family? Or has the darkness already taken too deep a root in her soul, compelling her to reject her children's desperate lifeline and plunge headfirst into a terrifying, violent future with a monster? The trap has been sprung, the ultimatum delivered, and the explosive consequences are about to detonate. What shocking decision will Phyllis make, and who will ultimately pay the deadly price when the dust finally settles on this devastating